Damn, Robert. Sorry about that, bro. Let's kick this off. This time it was me, brother. All right, here we go. Yeah, I was just like really busy. Here we go, guys. Let's do this thing. That and I cut my thumb. Worst thing to hurt. You use your thumb for everything. Oh, what are you doing here? Where's the right thing? This is what happens when Laura's not here. Every time. Boom! That's the right one, ladies and gents. All right, folks, welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. It is one half of that, Rich Baris, Robert Barnes over on the other side. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. Disperse, people. All right, yeah, I was late. That was on me this time. Listen, when you cut your thumb, I use a straight razor. I don't know about anybody else. I'm old school. I was taught old school Italian, straight razor, big blows. I don't care if you got 3 blades, 4 blades. And like I was trying to twist it off, and I twisted it, Robert, and it slipped because of the Manscaped crop gel, which I love. That's not an advertisement. It's just what I like. And it slipped, and it didn't twist the top off. It just slid down my finger. And as it did, I watched my skin fold back around the straight razor. I was like, ouch. Okay, let's just put this back and put a Band-Aid on it. And hopefully it heals. So yeah, but everything you do, use your opposable thumb. That is kind of one of the big things that separates us from most other animals in the animal kingdom, mammals and specifically, right? It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. All right, I do have that sign over there I was going to share with you in a second, but you know, what Robert, this show we're going to hear is about like Trump's first 6 months, you know, and you remember the media did this first 100-day his poll numbers are tanking, the worst first 100 days ever. You and I were there at the time with a new poll saying the media is lying. Of course, he fell. He was in the stratosphere. Nobody stays in the stratosphere forever. Nobody stays in approved plus 14 to 18 in modern America forever. Of course he was. And the media is lying to you. We were there for that. I want to preface the whole damn show with that, okay? Because it is a problem now. There are problems now. And I think the media polls are like exaggerating them. But everything that we had discussed and everything that we did tell people to watch out for, these age groups, millennials, younger MAGA voters, non-whites who voted for Trump, and in many cases, not Republicans, right? All of these various groups, Hispanic men, everybody was, not everybody, which we're going to talk about today a little bit, tribalism and stuff like that. Like, not everybody, but important voices, big voices, and the wannabes all over the internet, you know, trying to stymie those warnings, trying to quiet those warnings. And now here we are where we're in a place, as I'm preparing for the show over the weekend. I'm going to say this and kick it to you. I think there's some voters that he lost, and I don't think they're coming back. I'm being real with everybody. I just don't think they are. I try to tell these freaking people, you have a once in a generation opportunity here. You cannot F it up, and your sole purpose on planet Earth should be to convince these people that the Republican Party is now the guy that they voted for president. And it couldn't be like the first term. You didn't have the time for that anymore. And they didn't listen. So you know what? I don't know how much, you know, like, I'm a Jeffersonian, brother. You get what you deserve, you know? That's it. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll go through grading Trump's first 6 months according to the 5 different voter constituencies that made up the Trump 2024 coalition. Yeah. And that includes the Libertarians, That includes young MAGA. That includes boomer cons. That includes the swing voters that we went into great detail in our last episode describing. So if you want to know who they are, you can go back to that. But we'll describe how are they looking at the Trump voter, the Trump's first 6 months, and the Democratic crossover voter, voters that identify as Democratic, registered as Democratic, who crossed over and supported Trump in 2024. And loosely speaking, libertarians are about 3% of the electorate, give or take, about 10% or so of the GOP primary electorate to the degree they participate in GOP primaries. Boomer cons are about 40% of the GOP primary base, about 15% of the overall electorate. And by that, I literally just mean people that are 55 or older who identify as conservative and Republican. That's it. There's no other limitation. Some of those people include MAGA. That, I think that sometimes people get confused BoomerCon MAGA with young MAGA.
Yes.
And then we get young MAGA. These are people that are Gen X, millennials, or Zoomers who identify as Make America First. They're as likely to identify as independent as they are to identify as Republican. If you cross-check their registration, you'll often find they're not registered as Republicans.
Yes.
Some, not long ago, would have been registered Democrat to the degree they're older Gen Xers. Then you've got the Trump swing voters that we went into great detail. Two different groups here. The dropout voters. These are older voters. Some of them are boomers. Some of them are older Gen X voters who have dropped out of the economy and society and re-engaged under Trump. They often only turn out for Trump. These are low propensity voters, particularly from a midterm election perspective. These are voters that you can often track as they show up as disabled, they show up as unemployed, no longer looking for work, things like that. The other group are the young working class that we've gone into great detail describing over the last several years. These are millennials and Zoomers and younger Gen Xers, disproportionately minority, disproportionately working class. If they have a college degree, it's a lower end college degree. They have less than $100,000 in household family income. They disproportionately are single, divorced, or separated in terms of their marital and family life. That was the key to Trump's surge in popular vote win, was the increase of support from this voter group, younger working class voters, especially younger working class, as Richard was mentioning, Hispanic, Black men. And then you have the Democratic crossover voters, not a big voter group, and it varies by place and location, but disproportionately they're Midwestern. They're industrial Midwestern, lifelong Democratic voters. These are the voters who voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016.
Yes,
flipped around and voted for Trump in the general election. Many of them have never changed their voter registration. Many of they are still Democrat. They still identify as Democrat. Many of them, a good number of them, went back to Biden in 2020 because they thought, oh, well, now we'll have more of a blue collar, old school labor union Democrat. And then they were disappointed by that, how his presidency turned out, and went back to Trump. So we'll look at each of these five groups and how do they see what Trump has done based on the data. I did a deep dive into Richard's data, which, by the way, you can look up on Grok, and it confirms Richard Baris, the most successful, best pollster for the past decade plus.
It does. I heard this from now somebody else too, man, that this is true, huh? Grok actually says that, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's great, which is great. So it shows, Elon Musk, man.
Amen, baby.
You can't bet against Elon. He's so good at innovation, anything technology, the man's going to win. So looked at from January to July, and we're looking at two different things. We're looking at shift in support, and this overlaps with a range of other data. As Richard was saying, there's a lot of data out there. There is some signal amongst the noise. There's a lot of noise because media still doesn't know how to poll. But there is some signal that is consistent with Richard's own data. And looked at particularly what you want to, if you're looking at measuring Trump first 6 months, you're looking at two things. One is support, but not just support. You're also looking at intensity. And for there, you want to look at strong approval versus strong disapproval. How is his intensity rating holding up? Because intensity is critical amongst low propensity voter groups. If low propensity voter groups are not intensely with you, then you're in trouble. If they're intensely against you, you're also in trouble. So you need that intensity ratio to be favorable and positive amongst low propensity voter groups, like the dropout voters, like a lot of young MAGA. And then the second group is looking at support amongst swing voter groups. These are voter groups that literally can swing back and forth in terms of who they vote for. And that, again, we went into great detail in the last episode as to who those voters are. Now those
The
voters may
1980s too, baby. The 1980s babies we discussed. If you guys remember this, and that's why I did a whole show Friday. When Hulk Hogan passed away, I did this whole show because I was thinking, Robert, because I just wanted people who did not see that show, and maybe you didn't watch What Are the Odds the last time Robert and I did this. There was something about it. Didn't surprise me at all that the defector babies, the big ones, they came mostly from people born in the 80s and especially early 80s, like me. The 90s people, less so. 2000s are the first decade of 2000. There was no defectors basically anywhere else. And it was mostly, and the vast majority of them came from people who were born in the 1980s. And that's why it was so important to go over the death of Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne, because these people were raised at the end of the Cold War when America was not doing well. Reagan just became president. Reagan was riding the culture, though, Robert. You and I have talked about this a lot. The counter culture, right? You had a bunch of, let's be real, and now these are the boomers, folks, who identify as traditional Republican even, and they're getting more and more Democratic. These are the people who who pine on and on about revolution, but all they have to do is kill a couple of their heroes, and they cower under the desk sucking on their thumb like a baby, and they bought them off with cheap goods and with a bougier lifestyle, and they spent more money than any other generation that came before them combined, and now they
massive
don't
asset bubbles. I mean, the sort of boomer middle class heavily profited from the financialization of the economy. The boomer working class did not.
They had babies.
Upper middle class did.
They had babies like me who grew up in a world they were destroying. And there were a few people from politics and from culture who said, it doesn't have to end like this. You're American. It's okay to be American. By the way, it's all right to be proud. Guess what? We're better than everybody else. Now get the fuck up and let's go. And they instilled a fighting mentality in these generations. And we went over this in great detail, like what Hulk Hogan was and what he represented. If you underestimate that, or you don't really take the time to reflect that, Ozzy too. I mean, these guys were Ozzy was a counter to the 60s Flower Children songs. He was different. So go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted to stop and point that out because people might have missed that. Okay.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll start with the group that, in general, the intensity shift has moved negative towards Trump from January to July over the 6 months in a 17-point negative direction. In other words, that the strongly approval to strong disapproval margin is 17 points worse than it was in January. But almost all of that is concentrated amongst just a few voter groups when you dig in. So I would start off with boomer cons. I think boomer cons appear to be very satisfied with Trump across the board. Yeah, they don't mind the attacks in Iran. They don't mind. In fact, they often they support and cheerlead what you could call sort of their version of America First is America F yeah, woohoo, that kind of thing, right? Like the South Park caricature version that these are people who voted for George W. Bush. Now many of them did not back Trump in either primary. They backed either DeSantis in 2024, right, or Cruz in 2016, but they all pretend they're MAGA now. Certain, Bill Mitchell, et cetera, those kind of people. These are people that still think George W. Bush was fine, that the going in the war was great. They're still they're as Russia phobic as anybody. They don't mind, they want America to be number one. To me, that's what America First means to them. So none of Trump's foreign policy deviations from his campaign bothers them at all. And then on the other issues, on immigration, they're in alignment with the rest of the Trump voter base. They're in alignment with the Trump voter base on tax cuts. They're in alignment with the Trump voter base for the most part on tariff policy. That's been a conversion over the last decade. Think of him as kind of like Marco Rubio-ish in that regard. Though they're not big cheerleaders for it. But
like Mark Levin, too. He'll pretend he's happy with it when it's working. But before, he'll bitch and moan about it because he's afraid it's going to hurt his Social Security buying power. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. I mean, that's exactly
who a lot of these guys are.
Yeah.
So but on basically Trump has delivered for them, much as I would say from the donor class perspective. You look at who has donated to him, he's mostly delivered for the donor class. I think the donors are very, very happy. Boomer cons overlap heavily demographically with the donor class. So that group, you've seen very little negative movement. This is a group that's very satisfied, that doesn't feel disappointed, that is strongly approves of him. He's done great with. It's every other group he's bleeding with. And he's not adding from anywhere else. So amongst libertarians, he's utterly wiped out at the moment. Now, that's not a big voter group. It is a little bit bigger donor and politically active group, but in say close elections and midterms, they can be the deciding factor. So these are people that are Ron Paul people, Rand Paul people, Thomas Massey people,
Joe Rogan people.
Joe Rogan people. They're overrepresented in the podcasting space. Your George Gammons, et cetera. These are people who don't support the tariffs in generally. They support the tax cuts, but they support budget cuts more. So Elon Musk, think Elon in this category. They don't want foreign wars and foreign engagement.
No.
They want a lot less of that. So they want budget cuts. They want less foreign engagement in general. And these are some of their driving issues. So you can follow people like Joe Rogan. People like Dave Smith is a very good example of this. He's a very good spokesperson for young libertarians. And again, here you can agree or disagree with
Dave Smith. That's a great example. My son loves games, games like he does active stuff too. He's not a gamer or sits at home, but he certainly is active in the gaming community. They all love Dave Smith. All love Dave Smith. And by the way, the only time anybody would ever say like, "Oh my God, that's your dad," is when like he it'd be like Charlie Kirk interviewing Dave Smith, and then be like, "Oh, your dad knows this guy," like that's the way they wouldn't even know me. It's true. And by the way, this is important because young MAGA, there's certainly a part of them that is more libertarian, but then there's also, and this is the gross mistake that others have been making, these young MAGA types will tell you they are conservative. You have that libertarian wing, but then you have the other ones who say, no, we're actually the real conservatives. The boomers are not. The people they are fake conservatives. You can't be for limited government at home and then think you could expand empire all over the place. And they use the word empire all the time. They don't say interventionist. They don't say expansionist. They use the word empire when they speak. That's how they talk. So it goes to tell you, Robert, how they feel. They're right in line with that libertarian strain, even though they wouldn't call themselves libertarians. They'll call that other side of MAGA does not. And by the way, they absolutely cannot stand Benjamin Netanyahu, which I saw the Axios report. We got to address this when we're talking about this group specifically. I saw people deny on Twitter, on X, even though I put the data up to show it, Robert. You and I did a whole show on the decline of the image Israel has in the United States. And it's not Israel. And I feel bad for Israel because I think most Americans we poll, especially the younger MAGA types, I'm not sure they know what you and I know, which is that 70% of Israel can't stand Benjamin Netanyahu. He keeps winning because of a parliamentary system. 70% in the last poll said they don't have any faith in his government and want him to resign. This is why he started a war to begin with. He does this every time his popularity falls like this. And this is coming from somebody who has defended Bibi for years. All right. I have, you have, many of us have that are at a breaking point. Like you cannot just kill mass Christians. And then there's another topic for another show, but there's also that, like I brought this up to you before, we should do this show. There's this connection that between, Christians in America and Christian Zionists, right? And all of that with Israel. And I think if more people understood the root and the history of that connection, you would start to realize that this is not really a holy alliance at all. But whatever, I mean, it has defined 50 years now almost of our politics since at least the 80s, if not the 70s. Like it has defined that on the right. So I know people don't want to hear that, but these young people don't like Israel because they feel that Israel is the primary reason that we're not focusing on issues at home, that Israel, and whether it's right or wrong, folks, they have this big lobby, AIPAC, whatever, it doesn't matter. It is the perception And Donald Trump just solidified that perception that Israel gets us involved in foreign entanglements, and they could care less if we collapse as long as they're all right at home. Like, that's it. They feel like we're being used, and it's a hard argument to counter, Robert.
No doubt. I mean, I think with libertarians, to your point off the top, I think it would be a good idea at some point to do a special show on what's the future of Israel in American politics. How much it's going to be a pariah, how much it's going to be a success. A lot of boomercons think it's a great a winner. Are they right? Are they wrong on a go forward basis? How might Israel's own policies, Trump's own policies, dictate or drive that approval or disapproval of Israel? What that might mean globally for a two-party two-state solution, things of that nature. I think that would be a good idea, especially because there's so much misinformation out there. Though a lot of the boomercon pro-Israeli people are giving me all kinds of crap just for pointing out that things are not going the way they would like it to go.
After the Axios report, I got a call from a donor, a big donor. Everyone knows this person. All right, these people, actually, and that'll give you a hint. They don't even believe it. They don't even believe it. And I'm like, they called me
thinking it's popular to say, let's do genocide in Gaza. Woohoo! Let's level Gaza to the ground. Woohoo! I mean, not understanding this is very politically unpopular and radioactive within Trump's own base.
Within his own,
outside of the boomercons. Again, boomercons thrilled. Boomercons deeply pro-Israel. Boomercons happy with Machismo. Boomercons happy with, Trump sent some nuclear submarines to tell that Medvedev to shut up.
We're going to nuke Russia, dude.
Yeah, we can win a nuclear war, buddy. You don't understand, Barnes. That crowd, God bless them. That's the group that helped destroy the Republican Party, by the way.
They destroyed it. They did destroy it, Robert.
And their foreign policies. But they don't recognize that. And there's a portion of that that's MAGA. Now, but you're right. But to your point at the top of the show, I think some of the libertarians are lost. And
forever.
These are people that are not going to come back to the Republican brand or Trump. They're, again, not a huge portion of the population, but can be decisive in close elections.
And you add to that others, though, the non-whites, especially the younger ones. Let me ask you something. I mean, and the Arab constituencies, he did remarkably well with. You think they're going to come back after this? Zero chance that's going to happen. In Dearborn Heights, if we redid the election today, Robert, Donald Trump is losing Michigan. He's going to lose, and he's probably going to lose by 3 to 6 points. Everyone thinks that's like, oh, that's ridiculous. I've been through the map. We've done this on another show before. He's going to lose easily. I mean, these people are living in a freaking dream world.
It's to your point is that there are certain libertarian issues that are driving them out of the Trump camp that they align with young MAGA and swing voters on. So if you want to track sort of what without looking at the polling data, if you want to look at some influencers that are pretty good win veins for the libertarian mindset, for the younger ones, follow Dave Smith. For the older ones, follow Ron Paul. So they will give you a pretty good proxy as to what the libertarian mindset is. Now, the second group, we mentioned boomercons, very happy with them. Boomercons are very much Fox News, Wall Street Journal, institutional media, conventional conservatism, National Review, those kind of publications and places. That's their primary sources. They are above average active in Facebook, but otherwise below average representation on social media, below average representation in a wide range of spaces. I would say the only issue that boomercons are currently unhappy with Trump with, or would like to see more progress, is on indictments. They would like to see indictments related to lawfare, indictments related to January 6th, indictments related to Russiagate.
Which are never going to happen.
Yeah, correct. And again, if you want to follow boomercons, probably Mike Davis online is a very good example of a boomercon.
And we love Mike. Mike's a friend of the show, but let's get serious here. It's not going to just somebody being my friend is not going to disrupt the correct analysis here, folks. I mean, and honestly, I can't let you go forward without saying this because I really believe this very strongly. People like that are going to hurt in the long run because you're promising all of this accountability, you're never going to deliver. Stop it. We all know that you have no jurisdiction you can arrest these people in. You're going to hold a military tribunal. We're going to go down that rabbit hole again. Just cut the shit. If you're watching the show right now and you think Barack Obama is going to be indicted, you are being fed bullshit. That is not ever going to happen. First of all, he's the first black president. And in case you haven't been paying attention to the last 50 years of American politics, they're never going to let the first black president go down. All right. It's never going to happen. And that's maybe right, maybe wrong. It doesn't matter. That's the reality. When you juice people up and you fail to deliver, no amount of distraction, Robert, is going to make up for the fact that you let them down. And that's it. That's all I got to say.
No doubt. So that covers libertarians and boomer cons. The next group is Young MAGA. A good representation of Young MAGA is very strong in the influencer space. You could follow people like Salty Cracker is probably the best pure expression of Young MAGA that you will find out there. But you'll find other versions of it to a degree. Benny Johnson, to a degree. The Quartering, to a degree, Tim Pool. So at various aspects of it, they represent not as distilled and perfect as Salty Cracker does, but a lot of them do. Also, Alex Jones overlaps heavily with them.
And Charlie, I mean, you got to mention Charlie. The only thing I would say with Charlie,
big in that group, Turning Point.
He did an amazing job in the 24 election, and it's like coming down on him like a freight train because you didn't like him trying to remind you that you are, like, first of all, he's doing it from a place of love. He's trying to prevent the president from making a massive mistake. He hears from these people all the time. I'm just saying, like, you think about, Robert, when all of these sycophants and everybody else, and there are two types of sycophants, and they're both very dangerous. One is the sycophant that's really part of BoomerCon, and some of them really may not care if Trump succeeds or his legacy survives. They're just trying to eat right now and eat well. That's one type. And the other type are the people who think no matter what, Donald Trump could do no wrong. That's our friend Larry Schweikert. We love him, but he's living in a fantasy. He lived in a fantasy before the 18 midterms. He lived in a fantasy during Mueller. He lived in a fantasy during COVID. He lived in a fantasy in our election night special we ran during 2020 when his prediction was that Donald Trump would win re-election with over 312 electoral votes. When you and I knew that 100% they rigged this election and they used COVID to do it. And the best Trump could get was a tie.
Tight. Exactly. It was going to be whisker tight. And the only question was whether it was going to come within the margin of fraud. And if you've been watching us live or following us live, then, I tell people to get out of the betting markets and to sell everything Trump related by midnight because I could see what was coming. I thought Trump would have just enough to get over the edge. It became clear by midnight. He did not. Yeah. People, okay, boom, you're out. But yes, a lot of these people, they wish cast a lot. These are the people that also think, I get these people that like, cancel tickets to the 1776 event, things like this, that think that are so accustomed in the Israel lobby to, I'm going to use my money to dictate what you're going to say and believe. And that's why we're never going to be that way. And we're always going to give you our honest opinion. You can disagree with it, but it's going to be our honest opinion. I just would never advise you bet against it because that's never been profitable long term.
I just had a speech canceled. Because of it. That's why I'm saying we have to mention him. But at the same time, we also have to recognize, and God love him. I love him. I love him. I love his guys, his team. But the fact of the matter is, if the White House calls and says, shut the fuck up, they shut up, and that's it. Like, that's the difference between us and almost everyone else. I will say this, Benny will not. Benny will not. Benny Johnson will not. And look at his replies. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. The damage the sycophants have, a large part of the people, when I say they're not coming back, is because the president chose to adopt the tone of those sycophants on social media. Like, the back and forth on social media is not going to really, make a solidify. But when the man himself comes out and takes that posture and goes and comes at them, that does have an impact. And it's just a reality. It's just...
Everybody is begging for influence or wants access. You're gonna. I think Nerdrotic has always made fun of the Hollywood media and why you get fake reviews and fake interpretation of what's happening in terms of the public rejecting wokeism in film and TV. He calls it the access media because he goes, they're driven by access. They're not driven by honesty, by accuracy. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, on the right that right now are driven by access.
The same thing.
They don't want to offend and upset people. I've been pointing out that on the issue of justice. Now, here's where almost all the Trump voter groups are unhappy. So on immigration, I would say all the Trump voter groups are happy as long as he continues with funding, he got the funds, as long as he continues with the deportations, continues to have success pushing in the courts when the courts go AWOL, running that up to SCOTUS and getting approval and whatnot. As long as he doesn't do any sanctuary industries like his big donors want him to do in big ag, as long as he doesn't do that, they're going to be very, very happy about what Trump has done on immigration. On trade, there was always a mixed view. Some boomer cons and libertarians didn't like his protectionist policies. His working class, independent, young MAGA and swing voters loved that policy.
They do. Yeah.
Number one reason they supported him for many of them, along with opposition to foreign wars and foreign entanglement. However, he's now jeopardizing that by politicizing it the way Biden politicized the dollar, the way Biden politicized SWIFT. He's now saying he's going to use tariffs to go at India for buying oil from Russia. As Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, hey, if you're serious, just cut off the H-1B visas from India. That would be a lot more popular with his base. Because that doesn't have the risk of running oil prices through the roof. The oil prices, as we speak, are spiking in anticipation of this coming by the end of the week. And if Trump goes forward with it, with these massive secondary sanctions on Russian oil, what is likely to occur, and people get confused, it's not a sanctions on Russia, it's a sanction on these other countries. It is ironic. You have Trump out there and other people saying, how dare India buy Russian oil? Because that somehow supports the Russian war machine. He sounds just like Joe Biden and Victoria Nuland saying this nonsense. But putting that part aside, it's like we buy directly from Russia. There's uranium we can't get except from Russia. So are we supporting the Russian war machine, Mr. President? I mean, this is insane. He's listening to Lady Lindsey Graham whisper in his ear, and he's issuing these nonsense provisions. But and that's that aspect of trade policy has otherwise, with his base, been very positive. But he may lose headway with it legally and politically if he starts weaponizing it like the Biden administration did for non-economic purposes, that ends up leading to massive spikes in oil prices that undermine his entire ability to control the cost of living, that could then jettison even that constituency. I would say as a whole, young MAGA, happy with immigration, happy with tariff trade policy, unhappy with our engagement with Israel and Gaza and Iran, unhappy with our continued involvement with Ukraine, unhappy with continued military industrial. These are people that love Doge, don't like the fact.
They're the only ones remaining who liked Elon Musk. They're the only ones. Yeah, I mean, basically,
exactly. Yeah. They think Elon's cool. They like take down the machine. They love the memes. They loved all that stuff. They're above average active. They get most of their information from X and podcasters. They do not. They almost never watch Fox News. They have no idea who Fox
my
News
God,
even are. They don't know who Mark Levin is. Y'all even occasionally they'll say, "Who's this Mark Levin guy that Trump keeps yipping about?"
They only know Ben Shapiro by his nasally voice. They're like, "Oh, that guy, right."
I mean, they were the ones creating lots of memes mocking Ben Shapiro throughout 2016. That's who these guys are. They're on they used to be the Donald on the Reddit. Now I think it's the Donald.win. It's that sphere. These are people that are bothered by the Epstein file failure to disclose, bothered by the lack of prosecutions. As Salty Cracker was saying, for the love of God, arrest somebody. These are people that wanted radical reform. That for them, Trump is nowhere near, as you were describing it, conservative enough. Their view of conservative is radical, revolutionary. Overthrow this corrupt establishment that has stolen all of their dreams and ideals for them.
Because that's the thing. There's nothing in their minds, folks. There's nothing left to conserve. They want radical reform because they see it as we're screwed if we don't restore. You know what I mean? So to them, it's already too late for them to have the same standard as other generations that came before them. So unless something extremely bold is done, it's a wrap for them, Robert. It's a wrap, and that's how they feel. And by the way, I tend to agree. I agree with them. I do, because Trump's legacy, for those of you who are concerned about what happens to all these things after Trump is gone, because I think I hear from a lot of Trump voters, why aren't they happy with things that Robert was just saying? Why isn't it good enough? Why? Because this group Robert's discussing now is extremely unhappy with his performance on the economy and on inflation, despite some of it, some of the positive news. And it's because they feel It's very simple. It's optics. It's not performance. It's optics. It's not performance. It's perception. And they feel that they could be doing radically better if Donald Trump wasn't being hung up by a bunch of things that he said he wasn't going to give a shit about, right? Like, we all know that Donald Trump would agree to Putin's terms to end this war. Who won't accept it are the people who surround him and the foreign policy blob. They didn't elect him because he would give two shits about how those people feel. They elected him because he himself he's the one who posted, I will end the war in 24 hours. I don't care what anybody says. It's a dumb war. Russia won. It's over. That's it. Like, and we still have these people, these boomers and these other, and a lot of these sycophants, Robert, and others who are just full of crap, still arguing Ukrainians winning this war. I mean, they can't, to these people, they cannot believe we're back here again. Like, they just can't believe. And again, it's hard to argue because I tend to even agree with them, even though I'm older, because maybe I'm a parent. And I'm thinking that his first legacy was wiped away with the stroke of a pen. And Lindsey Graham sat on his thumb twisting, going, ooh, that's it. Like, that's all. Like, they did nothing. When Trump's gone the second time, everything he's doing now is wipe awayable. So, I mean, they're kind of right. Is my point. They are right. This was not radical, like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. Like, I thought he was going to smash the deep state, not put people in charge of it that will be hindered. And once they're gone, it'll go right back to being the deep state. Right. I mean, I just don't
completely.
I don't know, Robert.
It was symbolically significant and Epstein was substantively symbolic.
Yeah. Yeah.
People. So it's the things that have soured this group with Trump at the moment. Like, they have shifted. They're not disapproving. They've shifted from strong approval to somewhat approval.
Somewhat.
Overwhelmingly, it's this group that's had
somewhat. Some do say somewhat disapprove. They do.
Some are shifting.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
The biggest movement is from strong to somewhat, but there is somewhat approval to somewhat disapproval. And if Trump continues his current tack, that will shift to disapproval. But the biggest problem is, since this is young MAGA, they're low propensity voters. And the problem is he needs them at a very high, intense level of support. And without that, it's going to collapse in the 2026 midterms because his key voters will be gone. So the young MAGA, he's lost the intensity edge with tremendous. And you see this in, like, if you look at high school educated voters that are under the age of 55, that the intent and make income less than 100,000.
You should pull them up. Yeah.
Or some college groups. You look at these groups, and if you nest them together, you get the intensity decline gets into the 30s, right? You go from, this is a group that was plus 10 in January to minus 20 today in terms of strong approval versus strong disapproval. In fact, all the numbers show up: Black voters, Hispanic voters, independent voters that aren't committed to either, don't think either party shares much in common with them. Huge swing voter group. High school educated voters, some college educated voters, voters with less than 100 grand in family income, voters in the Midwest and Southwest. This is where you get 20 plus point movements between January and July, between those who, it was a big favorable gap for Trump.
I'm going to make a cross tab as you're talking.
Unfavorable gap for Trump now in the intensity rating. And because a lot of these voters are low propensity voters, the young MAGA voter, the Trump swing voter, and the Democratic crossover voter, is the group we're discussing now. These voters are such low propensity if they're not strongly approving, they're not turning out to vote in a midterm. And so right now, Trump is badly underwater because of the loss of these voter group coalitions, intensity of support in some cases, or flat out support in other cases. As Richard was pointing, the Republican part of young MAGA still approves them, but it's shifted from strong to somewhat. Amongst the independent portion of young MAGA, it's now disapproval.
Ooh, we can do that too. Yep, we can. Yep.
Huge problem for Trump. And it shows up disproportionately amongst Hispanics, Blacks, younger voters, minority voters, millennials and Zoomers, working class, people who make less than 100 grand in income. If you're Trump, you don't want to be surging with people over 200,000 and dropping like a rock with voters over 100,000, because the numbers of the voters, that's a big voter gap. There's a lot more voters under 100,000 family household income than there are voters over 200,000 in household income.
That, and I always hear, but Rich, these if his approval is actually doing better among people who have a college degree or higher income levels and are older, they vote at higher rates. So isn't this a good thing? Well, the fact of the matter is, folks, they're still voting Democratic. Many of them, like those truly persuadable ones, the element that we were talking about that are really like Democrats that are not loyal Democratic voters. You have those, and then of course you have the truly persuadable. You have independents. You have those who say I share little in common with either party. Those groups that overlap in MAGA, because especially young MAGA who says they share little in common with either party. They're different from people who identify straight up as conservative and would watch Charlie Kirk or watch Salty Cracker. Like, these are different groups. They're not going, those 65 plussers, and even that we were going over 75 plus last, what are the odds that improved almost 10 points for Donald Trump while everybody's declining? They're still voting Democrat on the generic ballot by 10 points. So you know, again, as we discussed also, the big part about this is they did this, and we saw this in 22. Republicans also
early COVID, a bunch of people that were never going to vote for him supported him. Gave people the false, and whereas a large part of his base was very unhappy, and people got confused by that. They're like, I remember Will Chamberlain, other people like that were saying, "Oh, this is a very popular program." You don't understand. It's like the same stuff we're hearing on the Iran war or Israeli support, or escalating the conflict with Ukraine. See, somebody's saying they think the oil prices are going to go down to 40, 50 bucks. Hey, buddy, if you think that, go ahead and bet that, because right now they're over 80 in the market. So if you think it's going to go to 40, God bless you. Hey, you can make a ton of money betting on that futures in September if you think you're right. Good luck with that. That's all I got to say. The good, I get you're near the oil industry. That's good. Okay, good. Go make a bunch of money then. If you think that, I don't recommend
25 to 29 Trump voters. Look at the 25 to 29 Trump voters, the decline there. That is bad, Robert. That is really bad.
We hear from a ton of them. I mean, they're the dominant audience of Salty Cracker is these younger millennials, older Zoomers. That's what fueled his
under 30 to 50, these groups. Oh my God. I mean, that's just like, right. I mean, it's
only going to keep getting worse if he continues down this escalation towards Russia, a continued involvement in Ukraine, weaponizing tariffs for politicized purposes now, the and cost of living go. If he loses control over the cost of living, because the other problem is this: let's say he does these tariffs on Friday, these secondary sanctions on any country that buys Russian oil, and he's talking about 100% or greater. If he does, that's what Lindsey Graham wants it to be, 500%. That's how insane he is. You look at what's happening, and then what could happen is the cost of living could spike. What that also does is it gives the Fed an excuse not to cut rates. They can say, golly gee, we wanted to cut rates, but we can't, because look at what's happening with inflation. It's now spiking right back up because of oil and energy costs. Then what does that do? That keeps the housing market frozen, and the housing market being frozen is starting to hurt construction, starting to hurt in the housing industry and other areas. All of a sudden, you start to get economic decline, and they're all going to blame Trump on this as well. So all of a sudden,
and all his new friends in the Senate will run.
Oh, completely.
They will all run the way they ran during January 6th, the way they ran during Robert Mueller, the way they ran when COVID went south. This is what I don't understand about Donald Trump. And Laura and I were actually just having this conversation, reading a transcript from a polling interview. We were on the way to the gym and we were looking at it. And it's basically young 30s, a voter, young 30s, black man outside of Atlanta. And he said, I wasn't really paying attention during the first Trump administration, but I did hear things, and what is this thing with Donald Trump basically feels like Donald Trump's not remembering who his friends were, who got him elected. And I can't really tell because I wasn't there for sure, but isn't this the same thing we all heard went on in the first administration? So I have no good answer for that, man. I just don't. I don't understand, aside from the Nixon effect. I don't understand why this guy feels that he has to impress all of these people or be friendly with all of these people who aren't really his friends. And I mean, some of it is just bad advice. There's no doubt. But didn't you see what happened to your first, I don't even want to call it a legacy because it's not. If he wasn't reelected, and barely, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act remained. But if he wasn't reelected, we would have saw our tax rates return to the highest in the developed world, among the highest in the developed world, which would have drove wages down. So not even that would have remained. We saw how easily his immigration legacy could be wiped away with a couple strokes of a pen, right? An auto pen. There's like really not a whole lot. I mean, you're going down the road now of, oh, I got judges on the federal bench, when even that you can't jump up and down for joy with, because thank God this administration, he finally got rid of the Federalist Society. But for the longest time, he didn't. So, I mean, I don't understand why he gets what's the word? I'm trying to be right here. He gets like the White House syndrome real bad, real fast.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Well,
and
also, I'm starting to think that when he's running for office, he focuses on voters. When he's in office, he focuses on a different group of voters.
Right. That's right. That's it, Robert. That's it.
How do I satisfy the neocon establishment? How do I satisfy the big donors to me and to the party, which are Israel First people,
Fox News, the Brian Kilmeades on Fox News. You know what I mean? Like,
very unpopular. It came out today that the Trump administration is announcing they're not going to provide emergency aid unless the city, county, or state agrees to do business with Israel. It's like, why are we tying aid to people in an emergency to Israel? This is ridiculous. And this is going to look idiotic outside of your extreme boomer-con nut jobs. This is the kind of thing. It's like, who in the administration is even thinking this through? It's like, if all the things, it's like one thing to have DEI policies for Israeli students, which we're now doing, or pro-Israeli students, creating basically affirmative action for them, special hate speech codes for them, all the rest. That's problematic on its own route, but that's not going to impact many Americans. Stuff like this, younger people are going to be like, what? I mean, while Speaker Mike Johnson said he was going home to his district, turns out Jerusalem is his district. The kissing the
wall again. So bad.
Orthodox Jew. I mean, God bless the Western Wall, but Jesus' tomb is just a little further away. That's normally where you go if you're Christian, by the way, FYI.
Yeah.
That temple was never a Christian temple. Just saying. God bless the temple, but I'm just saying it's a little weird to have Christians always kissing the Western Wall. But it's even weirder when you say you're going home. But then on top, it shows a degree of political cluelessness up there.
Yeah.
So you got the cluelessness on the military foreign policy, which is utterly out of touch with what his own voter base wants to happen, other than the boomer cons. You've got the weaponization of tariffs that might backfire on all of his trade policy, which is very important to his industrial Midwestern working class base, including younger voters and dropout voters, swing voters alike. And you've got this kind of obsessive domestic policy that's Israel first, whether it's not disclosing the Epstein files, which I still think that had a major role in because it would embarrass Israel more than any other foreign government, and because of Epstein's connections, deep connections to Mossad, that they're all pretending isn't there. It's not a coincidence that all the Israel First people are telling you, shut up and go home about Epstein. That's not a coincidence. And so people, your younger MAGA voters, I mean, it's fueling the rise of people like Nick Fuentes, for crying out loud. This guy's a Jew-hating race grifter who's getting all kinds of support because young voters think everybody else doesn't care about their interest, cares about a foreign nation more than they care about them.
This is the danger with a failed Trump second term, all right? Or at least failed by your standards and not my standards, as far as what was promised and what the voters were expecting. There will be no outlet for them now. Not in the traditional, the traditional vehicles, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. They will find, and this is why I tell these people that donor couple that called. I was like, listen, and I know you give to Israel and Israel causes like crazy. If you really loved Israel, you would listen to me right now, because if you do not, then what's going to come out of this, what's going to be born out of this is real anti-Semitism. It will be ugly. You think this is bad now? We are no longer in America in a situation where there's this rising dislike for certainly Netanyahu and Israel. By the way, everyone said we were full of shit. And you guys check out the Gallup poll. Did you check out the Gallup poll on Friday? They're just 2-3 weeks behind us at least. Right. That's specialized in doing over here, telling you what the numbers are going to say down the road, catching up on the trends before everybody else does. Look at Gallup, lowest approval for Netanyahu in Israel in our entire tracking history, right? Because it's no longer just some radical anti-Semites and leftists, Robert. Like, and that's not it anymore.
Like Rich Upshaw in the chat. If you can't handle the reality that things are moving against you, then you're living in denial. And living in that denial will hurt the cause you most
hurt you. Yes.
If you care about Trump and you care about Israel, then you need to listen to what is happening on the ground. Ignoring it won't help you. Ignoring it won't cause the problem to go away. Ignoring it won't solve the problem. Ignoring it will make the problem worse. And that's our point. So we're just laying out how these voters are reacting. You can disagree with how those voters are reacting. It's not going to change how those voters are reacting. So it's like people who wish cast and want to pretend people don't disagree with them. And when they hear people disagree with them, say, "Oh, I'm going to go stick my head in the sand to prove something to myself." It's not helping your situation. If you need accurate information to operate on. The reality is, as we speak right now, Trump's policy on Ukraine is not popular with key parts of his base. Trump's policy on the Middle East and Israel is not popular with big parts of his base. That if he continues down that path, then he is going to, and Trump's failure to deliver on justice is not popular with his base. In fact, it's not popular with anybody at the moment. Pam Bondi is underwater pretty much with every group of Trump's base. I mean, it's going further. For example,
I'm going to pull up the old question that's weeks old just to go ahead. Yeah, while you're talking about this, I'm going to pull up when we asked about what you think the U.S. role abroad should be, especially in the Middle East. All right. And look at who answers what. Okay. Go ahead, though. Go ahead. I'm just letting people know. I'm going to do that right now.
The issue is that right now, you look at what Trump right now should be, he would drop off from the heyday, but he should be much closer to his January numbers than where his July numbers are. And because you look at it, his budget policy passed, his tax policy passed, his tariff policy passed, his immigration policy passed. Much of his woke DEI policy has succeeded, has passed. So you get through almost all of your main agenda items, and you should be close to where you were in January. Instead, his intensity rating is as bad as it was in his first term. His intensity rating is as bad as it was for Biden. And it's like, how did this happen? And then you look at which groups it's happening with. It's happening with young MAGA. It's happening with libertarians. And it's happening with this new swing voters, working class, minorities, and millennials disproportionately.
Yeah.
And who do these voters listen to? What are their sources of information? What issues matter to them? Why are they unhappy with Trump? You listen to those sources. You go to the Ron Pauls and the Dave Smiths and the Salty Crackers and the Quarterings and the Luke Rutkowskis and the Alex Joneses and all of those, and you can figure out, okay, what issues are bothering them. And then you look at how it translates in the data. And what you find is that Trump's foreign policy and his pro-Israel directed upset policy is driving these voters mad. And they're very unhappy with it, and his failure to deliver justice. These are the two big failures at the moment that are undermining Trump at a point where he should be at his peak, because it's not likely to go up from here. It's much more likely.
It's much more likely to go down, Robert, until the end of his presidency, when people start to have.
Is what we're pointing out, and that's very dangerous when things are going to fall down more than they're going to go up.
Yeah, so here I pulled up during the height, and guys got to remember, this was during the war drum beating, which is going to be when you're going to get the most favorable pro-war response that you're going to get. If I would pull this again right now, it would be considerably worse. Remember, this is among independents who lean a certain way. Trump's most favorable group compared to other Republicans are those who say they share little in common with either. Obviously, there are very, very few true independents in this country, and they make or break close elections. And the way we find them is by asking a series of questions when they tell us what their affiliation is. And we cross it with their registration, by the way, to be able to see. But in any event, we asked that simple question weeks ago. Which statement comes close to your view on the U.S. role in the Middle East? Democrats are answering how they're answering right now because it's a Republican president in office. To some extent, there's a reverse effect on that. But when you see that only 29% think that they're a Republican identifying independents, only 29% are willing to risk a conflict in the Middle East to stabilize the area with a Republican president in office during the height of war drum beating. That is not a good result. You can see that there's actually just as many almost who say that the role in the Middle East for the U.S. is nothing. Zero. We shouldn't even be in the Middle East. That is Republican leaning independence. And when you look at the ones that are equally aligned, they're true, they are true swing voters. And yes, some Republicans win these sometimes, some do not. It's the sharing little common with either that Trump was a rock star with. Look at the percentage of those who say that the role of the U.S. is to stabilize the Middle East, even if that means military action and conflict, like one that Trump just took. 9%. 9%. Among those who are truly equally aligned with both parties, folks, 14%. I'm rounding. It's 8.8 and 13.7. When you look at the voters in these groups, a third of them say there should be no role at all for the United States. Only 26% of those who have nothing in common with either party say that you should stabilize the Middle East even through diplomacy and avoid military conflict. Most of this group say the role is zero. Don't be in the Middle East at all. And when you ask them and you're like, well, aren't you worried about war and things or don't you view the United States as a stabilizing factor? You know what they're going to tell you? You don't see China doing this shit. That's what they're going to say. Well, it's not blowing up and China's not wasting trillions doing it. China's not, expelling all of their empire in order which is going to collapse in order to help the damn Middle East. They got allies there. Iran's their ally. They did nothing. They did nothing when he bombed. They're not going to risk it because, of course, they're true realists in the mold of like A.H. Carr. Like if your enemy wants to drain themselves in a stupid pursuit, you don't interrupt them. You sit back and you go ahead, dummies, go ahead. And you wait for them to just drain out the bloodlet. It's called bloodletting in foreign policy. Exactly. By the way, join the
China has done with in Ukraine.
Bloodletting is their policy. Yes,
it's have at it. Keep going. The other amazing thing is we had a great geopolitical opportunity. Russiagate was partially about sandbagging Trump, being able to spy on him, take out General Flynn, stage a coup on his public policy, smear him in the campaign, and smear him while he's president. But the other part was Trump's real revolutionary campaign portion in 2016, aside from trade and war, was let's have a détente with Russia. Because and the geopolitical realists like Professor Mearsheimer thought it was brilliant because he was like, the key for the U.S., our real geopolitical rival, is going to be China. Now, your group at People's Pundit has read Mearsheimer, some of Mearsheimer's great works as part of the book club. And this guy has been way above average at predicting all kinds of things.
He's brilliant.
And to his credit, I mean, I disagreed with him, but now I'm coming around to his point of view. He said the degree to which we defer to Israel is going to become a problem for U.S. foreign policy down the road. Yeah. He's now right.
He was right.
But his whole point was, Russia and India are right next to China. They have historic rivalries with China. If we could align Russia and India against China, that puts us in a fantastic position. That the greatest chess move we could make is not tariffs on China, though I support that for supporting our U.S. industrial policy. But from a geopolitical perspective, it would be aligning Russia and India with us rather than China. And that's what Russiagate blew up. Russiagate blew up the opportunity for us to align with Russia. And now, for some reason, after Russiagate's proven, Trump is doubling down on the deep state's policy. And he's forcing Russia and India to get together with China. He's making BRICS stronger Everything he's doing is making BRICS stronger, stronger, and stronger because he's telling the world, we'll weaponize tariffs, we'll weaponize the dollar, we'll weaponize SWIFT, we'll weaponize anything. So you better get rid of that. You better have alternative accounting mechanisms, alternative payment systems, alternative trading relationships. He is driving the world into BRICS with these policies by listening to the neocon Lady Lindsay's whispering in his ear and the swampy Susies who I was telling somebody the other day, if you want to know what Trump's going to do going forward, don't listen to any of his campaign speeches. Go to the America First Policy Institute, a corrupt Bushite, money-driven institute that was designed to disguise and masquerade itself as America First when it has nothing to do with America First. It was meant to co-opt it, the messaging, and force it into these positions. And the big oil people, et cetera, all those kind of cats. Just the old the military industrial complex, heavy investors in there, big pharma, heavy investors. And we're seeing it at every level. I mean, he appoints a great person to be AAG, Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust, and now she's constantly being undermined by Bondi, who's doing sweetheart deals over cocktails at the lounge there, the little lounge underneath that hotel across from the
Mayflower.
Yeah, exactly. And what they call off the record, right?
Which is where Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan met after the inauguration of Donald Trump the first time to drink and laugh about Donald Trump ever thinking he was going to get a wall. All right. So this is where all of these people go to you over. It is. I can't stand that place. I can't stand because you will. For people who don't know anything,
buy it just to listen in on it because you find out what the real. Basically, go to the American First Policy Institute and it's be like listening in on those conversations. You know where Trump's really going. And
remember,
it's all donor class driven. It's not voter driven.
Remember Ned Ryan, man? He's been true America First for a long time, and Ned, the truth is they're doing a much better job at co-opting America First this administration than they did the last one. They never even tried. I mean, they threw they paid lip service to it, but they didn't actually try to get in the trenches with people and co-opt it like they are doing now. And they're using mouthpieces to do it, which again, to offer somebody favor is a big deal in this business. You will lose your livelihood if you tell the truth or you don't go along with it. Or not your life. Maybe you're not, because Robert and I have been smart enough to understand how to insulate ourselves from stuff like that. But it certainly hurts. There's no doubt. It hurts. They can hurt you. There's no doubt. I will say this about Russiagate real quick, because I think what you just said was so important. The real crime. There are two really big crimes that Russiagate committed. One is the obvious one everyone talks about, which is that they tried to subvert the will of the sovereign voter and veto their decision for president and the way that the direction they wanted to take the American public. And America, the nation. And they did. And in order to do so, they used the most powerful weapons in our arsenals entrusted to people that by the American public to fight our enemies. And instead they turned those weapons against the American public and they weaponized it against you. And that is obviously the big one, and articulated the way that people just don't articulate it. But that's the first crime. The second one is that it created a Russophobia in this country that has now led to a more than foolish, exceptionally dangerous foreign policy. If you were in the book club, like Robert said, you would have read at least The Tragedy of Great Power Politics by John Mearsheimer. And I got bored and I went back to college just to study international relations because I needed a break and I got bored. And nobody in academia at that level of academia can argue against John Mearsheimer. They try, but they get destroyed. It's like hilarious that foreign policy is governed and dictated, or driven by the blob who believes in every failed thesis that ever was argued in academia. And even though they're supposed to be the progressives, Robert, right? They're supposed to care about the results of scholarly work in the academic institutions around our country, and they don't. And in The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, you will see that their historical rivalries and spheres of influence obviously impact the decisions that nation states make. The smart play is to have a détente with Russia. And India loved Donald Trump until that post the other day. India loved him. They rolled out the red carpet for him in a way that I've never seen before. And by the way, I have a friend who's a reporter there, and he, during the first Trump administration, I mean, he couldn't believe it. He said that he loved Donald Trump, but he couldn't believe the reception that not only the government gave, but the people gave. And it was because they thought that he was smart enough to do this. And they are now dealing with what some of his base are dealing with, which is like posts on Truth attacking them, and they're sitting there wondering, why am I being attacked? We were like your most loyal people on the global stage, and now you're attacking us because of what? Because we're not okay with some of the stupid decisions you made in the Middle East, and now you're going to make in Russia. That's what's going on here. And the dangerous enemy is China. It's not even close. An enemy that we built up. Thank you, Bill Clinton and the neocons and the globalists who came together and all decided that would be a great idea to export our wealth, give them favored nation status, make them extremely rich, because they really believe that one day that will lead to China becoming a democracy. Then we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya together, because according to Bruce Russert and his failed democratic peace theory, democracies don't war together, which is, of course, bullshit, which John Mearsheimer destroys in Twos of the Tragedy of Great Power Politics. It's a 350-page book. It takes him 2 pages to destroy Bruce Russert. Bruce Russert couldn't even defend that thesis in his own college. He failed. He failed with that thesis. This is unbelievable that most of Washington, D.C. bought this shit and has been buying it since the 1990s. And now I think I'm getting concerned that they have Trump buying some of it, brother. I really do, because
there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's going down the Boomer Con path.
He is.
For the love, I mean, it's to AD's point is a good one in the chat, which is our point is not in terms of what we subjectively want. We don't want Democrats to win. I don't think the Democratic Party is a viable party to represent America's best interest. This is what is going to happen if Republicans and the Trump don't reverse course on these issues. If they reverse course, if they listen to the voters and do what the voters want, as Richard's been pointing out, they could build a coalition that lasts a generation.
Yep.
If they don't, they could blow it in such a way it's unrecoverable and an existential threat. And that's the point we're making in terms of what we would subjectively prefer. Objectively, we're just telling you what's happening. Right? Whether I don't agree with the Boomer Cons, but the Boomer Cons love a lot of this. We're just pointing out, what do voter groups like? What do they not like? Where is that trending? What does that mean on a go-forward basis in terms of policies? Trump has failed in his first 6 months to keep his coalition together solely because of how he's gone off on these foreign policy excursions that contradict his campaign. And that's what we're pointing out. I mean, I happen to also disagree with those foreign policies, but whether I agreed or disagreed with them, I'm going to tell you what the voters are doing and saying. Like, I don't agree with Mike Davis about foreign policy in Israel or Ukraine or the Epstein files, but I'm going to tell you the Boomer Cons love it. So I don't have, I'm just going to tell you what they like, what they don't like, so you can make your own decision. But in terms of if you are in the Republican camp or the Trump camp, then you should want them to reverse course on these key policies before it keeps, because what Richard and I are seeing is we keep warning them and they keep making the mistakes and getting it worse and worse and worse.
And then when they do finally course correct, Robert, it's too late. So last week, the White House finally realized, I guess Tony maybe gave them some real data for once. The White House finally came to grips with the fact of what we were talking about in the first 30 minutes, which is that young MAGA doesn't like Netanyahu. They don't like this Israel first policy. And now they're all telling their pollsters, F you, I'm not going to vote in 26. You wanted me to vote for you in 24? I did. You wanted to dog me and make fun of me and call me an anti-Semite and dismiss me because I want you to focus on inflation? Okay, guess what? Live with it. And now they realize they're in trouble. And it's too friggin' late. I'm sorry. Like, everyone is always like watching the show looking for an answer. I don't know how you bring that vote now to 13% of the electorate, Robert. I don't know how. I think it's going to be like 7.
And to your point, how do you decide now to double down again? Double
And
down
then
on
they reverse again all the time. Right.
double down on Israel. You have Mike Johnson running there and doing his photo shoots, and Randy Fine. I mean, Randy Fine is really remarkable because he makes Gerald Nadler look healthy by comparison. I mean, that's really an impressive achievement of Randy Fine. But when you're that kind of
green rooms with that guy. Let me just say this right now.
that guy's
He's an
disgusting.
asshole. He's an asshole. You got to hear the way he talks to his staff and the way he talks to producers. Guy's an asshole. I have nothing. I mean, I don't care. I'm not here to make friends, Robert. That guy is a prick. And by the way, they scam the shit out of those donors. When are these donors going to get so
Remember,
like sick and tired of being lied?
Lose, so they
Yeah.
had to send him a bunch of money at the last minute.
Yeah, again, Tony Fabrizio down by 4. When, by the way, me and Jason over at Qantas are polling the same damn race, and he's up by 11. And I go to Jason. I'm like, "Did you poll Florida? Did you poll this race?" And he's like, "Yeah, bro. I was just about to talk to you about this." And he's like, "You see that Fabrizio poll?" like bullshit.
Trump's pollster, by the way. Trump's pollster is infamous for faking results to be able to get what message out he needs. I mean, I've never been a Fabrizio fan. And Trump, you can tell, believes this, right? They're whispering him being a neocon is really popular because he's saying it in interviews. He's like, man, ever since I didn't disclose the Epstein list, my ratings are way up. No, they're not.
Trump,
they're down. But
Trump,
he's listening to nonsense whispered in his ear.
How do you believe that? And then he goes and polls for Anzalone for the Wall Street Journal and comes up with a result that is 16 points different than what he just handed you. Don't you find that a little funny? He did it to Blake Masters too, by the way. Blake got absolutely screwed with that, Let me just play this though, because again, this was, Monday? This was, I think, a full week ago on Gutfeld. And this is when, and thank God it does seep in here. Okay, it does. They're celebrating. This is a segment on Greg Gutfeld, and they're celebrating the poll that the president retweeted. When you're reduced to retweeting Quinnipiac and all these other bad pollsters, there's something very wrong. All right. So I'm not going to play the whole clip where he goes through the poll results and everything, but they're basically celebrating that Democrats are at, I think it was 37% in the Wall Street Journal, or 33 in the Wall Street Journal poll. And in the Quinnipiac poll, 19% favorability. Folks, we have never measured the Democratic Party any lower than 37% favorable. So I don't know where these people are coming up with this, Robert, but you know what? At least some people get the point we're making. And I want to give him a hat tip here and show, because he's on Gutfeld, and this is not the popular thing to say, but he does, because he has balls, and I'm proud of him for it. You ready? Let me play this clip real quick. All right. I'm gonna pop this up. There's the whole Fox thing. Let me put it all for big on the screen here. Okay, here we go. Oops, there we go.
Do you see the Democrats in this current state as hitting another rock bottom, or is this the final rock bottom? No coming back.
I actually think there is more hope for the Democrats than these polls let on. I don't believe the world is as polarizing as it shows in these, is not polarizing as it shows in these polls, because the country is pretty evenly divided, and the Democrats have one advantage. Sure, they're on the wrong side of a lot of 80-20 issues, but they have a dedicated group of nut jobs that believe in what they are espousing in these 80-20 issues. And there's two types of swing voters, according to pollster Richard Baris.
Who?
Especially in the midterm where Trump's not on the ballot. There's the people who are persuadable, that small bit of America that's still persuadable. And there's the people who are going to vote or not vote. And voter propensity has been leaning towards the Democrats. Like after Trump's coalition has expanded to these working class people, they have a lower propensity to vote. And the Democrats have these more passionate nut jobs that might show up. So what I don't want the Republicans to do is spike the football before you've hit a home run.
Bang! God bless Joe Machi. God bless Joe Machi. First of all, he's funny as hell. Second of all, he gets it. Like, this isn't that hard to understand. I mean, obviously we're sinking through to some people here, Robert. This isn't that hard to understand.
Well, look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's talking
She
about
did.
the party being so bad that she wants a divorce from it.
Yeah.
I mean, Marjorie Taylor right down the street from me, that Northwest Georgia major media market is Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
These are ancestral Democratic areas. These used to be 90-10 Democratic areas. Now they're 90-10 Trump areas.
Yep.
But the congresswoman representing them is saying the party is so out of touch with their voter base that they are not only losing their voter base, the new independent swing voter base and young MAGA, but they're losing it to such a degree she has to look around to what she's going to do going forward.
Yep.
This is a huge warning sign.
Once
and they're
Trump
ignoring
is on,
it. They're doubling down on let's see what other Israel first policy we can do today. Let's see what further Ukraine deep state policy we can do today. I mean, it's insanity. And clearly people are not getting through to Trump that he is jeopardizing his own coalition and he's jeopardizing J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance won't have a future if Trump keeps going down this path.
No, he won't.
It will be a wipeout in 2026. These are just bad policies. These are politically, whatever you think of the policies on their own terms. I don't happen to like these bad neocon policies, but even if you do, politically, they're radioactive amongst the new swing voter base.
And it's funny you brought up, because she represents them too. And then, where you are, right, where Barnes is located, folks, or at least, his stomping ground. Then you have places which Barnes and I warned everybody about, even in Kentucky, where Trump romps by 25 points. They damn near lost Kentucky 5 in 2018. And that was a better map. This is what people don't seem to understand overall, not in Kentucky specifically, but nationally, the map is not the same as it was in 2018. In 2018, it was easier for Republicans to win the House. They did a horrible job redistricting because they gave it to, this is the Republican Party without Donald Trump, Robert. They gave it to Chris Christie to deal with, who knew nothing at all, and neither did his team, about how to win elections in this country, let alone the minutia and the details of drawing House districts. They actually thought that these independent commissions, which are not independent and they're not even commissions, they're a panel of left-wing academics who think that race is the only thing that matters when you're drawing up a district, when geography, obviously, and culture all very clearly were supposed to go into factoring this stuff. I wanted to bring up because from speaking of Kentucky, right? There is a Mitch McConnell, and there are two really McConnellites. And then there's another guy who's being backed by Vance's people, and on the sideline, Vance's people, and I mean that as his team, like that he has around him. Although you got to get rid of Ryan, JD. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Ryan is a clown. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. And look, I mean, he's just that is not a good person to have around giving you advice. But he cut what I think is, because the number one question I always get is, well, Rich, how do we fix this? Right. The message has to completely change. And there's an ad that was cut. Go ahead. Before I play it.
To just briefly interrupt.
Yeah.
Point. Remember in 2014, Republicans were about to make a disastrous decision to grant mass amnesty on illegal immigration. And the only thing that stopped it, other than Rush Limbaugh calling it out to his great credit.
Oh, God, I miss him.
Personal pressure on him. Everybody put personal pressure on him. He came out and he called it out totally. That was the beginning of full populist rush, returning to old populist rush that had been a little bit contaminated by the George W. Bush era. Constricted. I was like, oh, wow, Rush is back. Real Rush is back. Old Rush is back. Kansas Rush is back. The one that says Democrat Party, because that's how they say it in Kansas. The feminazi, Rush Limbaugh is back. The one I hung out with when I was a young Yale student when he was still doing his TV show in New York. Great guy, by the way. Very personable, very sweetheart of a human being. Not like some other Dan Bongino, some other prominent conservatives in the media space. You meet some Tucker Carlson, sweetheart. Rush Limbaugh, sweetheart. You meet him behind the scenes.
Mark Levin, no.
Big ego. Mark Levin, total prick. Should be shot on sight for the sake of humanity. But his
Fox News buddy, who I'll remain nameless, another one.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch on that crowd that are.
Yep.
But in 2014, they took down the number 2 in the House in Virginia on immigration. The moment that happened, all of a sudden the Republican Party got the message. These primary campaigns are a great opportunity for the Republican Party and Trump to get the message.
And who is Trump's pollster polling for again in that race? If memory serves correctly, Eric Cantor.
Exactly.
You can't make this shit up, dude. All right, man. You just can't. I just wanted to play this because it's like the message has to completely change. You have to be more Trumpy than Trump is being right now, and that's a fact. And I think that
You got to be campaign Trump, not
campaign Trump.
donor-driven Trump.
Someone and yeah, you said, I'm so glad you said this because it slipped my mind before. What I wanted to say was, I think what we're witnessing when you said we were talking about him being isolated in the White House and then caring more about the donor constituency. I think this is a product, a direct result of not having a Steve Bannon-like figure who, during at least before the Mueller investigation, Bannon used to constantly say, "Sir, we got to get you out of here." Right. And he would tell him, "We got to get you to the people." Right. So, and for the first 6 months, things were going great until they screwed him. And, Jeff Sessions destroyed the first Trump administration. And by the way, again, even though he was the first senator to endorse Trump, and he was very Trumpy.
I put him in every except Attorney General. Don't put him.
He was a fool, Robert. He had that mentality that these boomers have, and the Republican boomer cons they have, which is this idea that he kept saying, I'll never forget the day. My friends across the aisle, my friends. And Laura and I are like, this stupid Keebler elf bastard. He has no idea they will slit his throat and leave him and his beautiful family over there to die in the ditch, just to stop Donald Trump. He had this stupid expectation that because he served in the Senate with these people, they were going to treat him differently, Robert, that they were going to give him a certain level of respect. And it's like, for that kind of person, I just have no more patience with them because we're way beyond needing to explain to them what time it is, So for me, it's almost unfathomable. I don't know. And there's something I want to say out loud, and I don't know if I should, but maybe I should just say it. I'm getting a little worried that Donald Trump himself is thinking about what happens to Donald Trump after his presidency instead of what happens to the country and his voters' presidency. And I can even understand that. I can, because of what they did to him. I mean,
it's pretty normal that most politicians care more about who can reward them after their presidency than they do the people who
or not throw them in jail.
It's a flaw. It's a weakness in the representative form of government, in my opinion. That the incentives realign once you're no longer running for office. The incentives align to who can protect me, who can hurt me after I leave.
Who can hurt me.
And and he looks like he's governing in that direction. And the pick of swampy Susie Wiles to be his chief of staff was always deeply disconcerting to me for that reason.
Pfizer, Robert?
Because exactly. I mean, the covering for all, there's this one is a scandal a day at Pay for Play, Pam Bar. I mean, remember that was a reputation in Florida. Was Pay for Play Pam which
I defended her against all the time, and
now she's that on steroids as the Attorney General. So people are saying, how do we, aside from pushing the court of public opinion, best way to get all these politicians a message is through the primary challengers. Who do we support in Kentucky? Support Paul Dans against Lindsey Graham, Lady Lindsey.
100%. As a matter of fact, I wanted to tell you about this, because I always get memorabilia when I'm checking out places. Look what I got. It's a Paul Dan sign. And I went there, and this is what he did. And just before I play this ad, he opened up his campaign. First of all, there was a prayer breakfast, and that's really what I was there for, to pray with him and, talk to him. And because Paul is Paul's a friend. I would consider him a friend. And honestly, I do always get nervous when my friends want to run for office, because I feel like they're going to be, this game is gross. It's corrosive. But he's a brilliant man, and he's a real patriot, and he's a real deep state fighter. By the way, the good stuff Trump did is Paul's blueprint. All right. So everybody watching this program knows, and because I think it's really shitty what some of the people surrounding the president did to Paul and everyone who worked for Project 2025. You didn't know how to do it, Chris. None of you did. You had no idea. Anyone around Donald Trump before, you had no idea how to take control of that government. They had no idea. Robert, if it wasn't for Paul, then you wouldn't be where
A
you're
lot
at.
of the good policies on immigration, the
Sorry.
administrative state, Doge, all were inspired by Paul Dans. Paul Dans was the true believer. He was MAGA before MAGA, as he told me when I first met him. He was doing great work in the first Trump administration, would have done great work in the second Trump administration. But Swampy Susie and her pal, Chris Lasivita, who's busy raising money from Never Trumpers
He is.
against Thomas Massey. All the money's coming from Never Trumpers.
He's doing the same thing in South Carolina to stop Paul Dans. He's doing the same thing.
Correct. Chris Lasivita, who, by the way, called for Trump's impeachment in 2020.
And in his arrest, he wanted him to die in jail. How do you look past that?
And the guy's a pure grifter. He just money. He's looking for who's going to pay him. If he has principles, they're bad ones. That's who he is. But Paul Dans, great challenger, and it's the way to get the message to the elected office holders and to the White House. Is if they see
Paul loves the president. He loves him.
Absolutely does.
He loves him, man. He adores him. He does.
But he is Trump candidate Paul Dans. Lady Lindsay is always been anti-Trump to those who actually vote for Trump.
He goes to the
deference Trump has given to her.
He goes to the Charleston Exchange after this prayer breakfast, and he's got people there supporting him, right? And he gives his speech. His wife introduces him. His wife's fabulous, by the way. And by the way, there you go. Again, is for people who don't know, his wife taught Natalie Portman how to dance for Black Swan. Like, this girl walks in circles Republicans can't walk in. This woman, and she's a mother of three beautiful girls. She's a rock star, and his whole family's they're good. They're the American dream. They are. And by the way, it doesn't help to support Donald Trump when you do that. Okay, so just remember, what is Lindsay
in common with Paul Dan's wife? He likes to dress up in leotards too.
Oh my God! So it's a great lead up to what I was going to say. Let me tell you. Oh my God! Everyone, if you guys go to Charleston and you speak to the donors, and they all can't stand Lindsay anymore, they just don't know. Like, they want a viable alternative, right? So Paul, being somebody who's had all that Rolodex too, from Project 2025 and reshaping Heritage, which was when Paul got to Heritage, it was a Mike Pence neocon, just like blob of a think tank that betrayed conservative values. That's what it was. And he kicked all of them out and rebuilt it. And with good people, by the way, there were still good people there, but that's what happened. He chooses the Charleston Exchange, which, if you know the history of Charleston, is a big deal. Okay, he chooses that exchange in the room where the delegates for South Carolina ratified the Constitution, okay, and basically said, not the Constitution, I'm sorry, the Declaration, and basically said, yes, we are going to break. He goes there and he gives the speech, and there's one line in the speech that was the headline. Lindsay, you're a 73-year-old childless warmonger with no stake in the game. And that's what it comes down to. I don't like this idea. You got somebody like Lindsey Graham. And by the way, by saying that, it makes people think about, it insinuates and makes people think about what we all know to be true. Why does Lindsey Graham have no children? Anybody? Anybody in the chat? Be honest. Be honest. Why does Lindsey Graham have no children? Locals, YouTube, be the first one to say it. I got to wait for you guys to type. But I think I really am waiting to see if anybody has the balls to say the answer. Come on, guys. Right. Because he's gay. Right. And it's this quiet, secret, even though we're in a Trump era where being gay is not something like in the Romney Republican Party, which was, frowned upon. Donald Trump was very acceptable to gay, the gay community.
The Secretary of Treasury is openly gay.
I mean, Jesus. So, why does he still feel the need, Robert, to hide this like it's a bad thing? And the bottom line is, I don't care what he is, but I do care that he has no stake in the game at all. He doesn't care because he's
example of his inauthenticity, of his fakeness, of the Lindsey Graham is everything that's wrong with Republican politics. That's why Paul Dan's challenge is so critical to support, in the same way to support the candidate in Kentucky that's not the Mitch.
Can I run this? This is the best ad I've seen all year. This may be the best ad I've seen in years. And it's only 30 seconds. And again, while you're listening to it, think about what really Republicans are going to have to do here. They're going to have to be more Trumpy than Trump is governing right now. And this is it, man. By the way, he's running against two McConnell acolyte. Really, Cameron's the problem here. And then after, I just want to point something out that I think is really funny. But here we go.
And his boys, Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron, they don't know hard times. Hard times is being raised by a single mom, not knowing if you're going to make rent. It's watching factories close and opioids destroy your community. Hard times is a man working a job for 30 years. They give him a watch, kick him in the butt, and say globalism took your job. That's hard times. And that's why I back Trump's tariffs 100% to bring back American jobs. I'm Nate Morris, and I approve this message because I'm a Trump guy, not a McConnell boy.
Oof. Oof.
That's what we need more of. Challenging Graham, challenging McConnell's crew in Kentucky, challenging Callahan in Louisiana. We need more of these kind of challenges. David Giglio potentially running for the House in California. Other people, we need a challenger to Mike Johnson in northern Louisiana. That there's a lot of places where we need to send the right message, like the 2014 primary challenges did and succeeded at getting the Republican Party to back off a suicide. If they had gone through, the Democrats would have rolled forever because they would have had mass amnesty for all the illegals. There
15 judges on 15 judges on the Supreme Court, 12, whatever, who knows? They would have had the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico. I mean, they were going to do all of this. Yeah. Hard times. I mean, that ad is, and listen, guys, I mean, I don't know him that well, but I will tell you this. He's authentic. He's authentic to me. Nate is authentic. I know some of these other guys, obviously, I can speak to them like personally a lot more, but if you're around people for long enough, who's full of shit and who's not, and he's not full of shit, and by the way, I watched that ad and it reminded me to go back and check my tariff polling, and because of some of the ridiculousness that you'll see in some of this, in some of the polls, especially media polls. But I asked, do you support or oppose the use of tariffs in trade negotiations? Right? That's how we asked it. Plus 29 in Kentucky, plus 32. I'm sorry, 29 in Pennsylvania. In Kentucky, plus 32. So think about this. Pennsylvania, the quintessential battleground state, which appears only Donald Trump can win. They're just 3 points behind Kentucky on support for trade, the trade strategy. That doesn't make any sense unless you understand that both of them, one is supposedly a red state that will elect a blue governor here and there, like we see with Andy Beshear, right? But the bottom line is they're not, there's an element they're missing with the Republican brand that isn't seeping through in Pennsylvania. And it's that part of it. Because what kind of Republicans, with the exception of Mitch McConnell, who insulated himself, what kind of Republicans come out of Kentucky, guys? Right. These are like either libertarians or like Trump-looking Republicans that kind of look like Democrats anyway, right? I mean, or old school blue dogs, with
Kentucky. It was an Eastern Kentucky Republican who was the only one who refused to vote for the Gulf of Tonkin resolution in 1964.
That's right.
Getting trapped in the Vietnam War. So this is the old. I mean, J.D. Vance comes from this base. Used to be the base of the Democratic Party from 1828 until 2010. That's how long that lasted. From Eastern Oklahoma through the Appalachia, East Tennessee, up through coal country, or what they call black country in Pennsylvania, but through huge swaths of Kentucky, including the southern Kentucky across the border from Cincinnati, where that part of is where J.D. Vance grew up in. His family comes from the Kentucky Appalachian side of that history, who moved into Cincinnati when there were industrial jobs there at the turn of the century, and now have lost those jobs in mass and suffer what J.D. Vance had to grow up with, drug addiction problems in the family. I mean, his mother was incredibly talented, very hard.
Which Nate said.
Yeah, exactly. It was because of the destruction of these jobs. So I think if
took my job and gave me a pill, that's what Nate said. I mean, that's exactly what he said. Took my job, pushed some drugs on me. That's it. Are you tired? That's a hard time. That's a hard time. Not a friggin' government employee who gets a 6-month severance package to find another job that's going to pay them more in the private sector anyway. This is a hard time. That was brilliant. Brilliant.
Absolutely. We can get to the chat and then or some of the super chats that came in, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ready to do that, I just pulled them up. I don't know if you could see that. I just actually pulled them up. But yeah, locals, I'll read yours out. I'll go there now.
Yeah.
Some of them are just like, they're not really super chats. The Lindsey Graham memes in this chat, brother, are absolutely to die for.
I'm hoping Dan's uses in his campaign that I'm going to talk to him and some other folks as well that are running for office about using new technologies and techniques in the camp. Don't use the generic bland commercials and whatnot. Use memes, use other mechanisms of communication that we can unlock. It doesn't have to be wag the dog, don't change horses in midstream kind of political campaigning. You embrace the meme in particular. Embrace social media, embrace podcasters, go on these places and people. And I would say, like, for example, I think it's already happening on the Democratic side. You're probably going to see on the Republican side start that people who are like, let's pull back from being overly engaged in the Middle East get much more popular. I mean, right now, Mamdani, I never thought this would happen. The guy that says globalize the Intifada is winning the Jewish vote in New York City. That gives you an idea how far Israel has collapsed in the court of public opinion. When it's losing Jewish voters in New York City to the globalize the Intifada guy.
I got a family member, and you may know who it is or not. You probably will, but I'm just not going to announce it or it'll kill me. But, he was very much in New York City. He had a big role in New York City. They wanted him to run for Senate, actually. I love him. He's just great. But when it comes down to this, he said that while he meant Republicans, have always wondered why the Jewish vote, especially in New York, trends so heavily Democratic. He's like, a lot of them are secular, but a lot of them are secular because of the Netanyahus. Like they're at a place now where like some of the new right is arriving. They were at decades ago. Like, there's a long history of communism movements, and that all goes through. And Kevin Phillips discusses that in the emerging Republican majority. I mean, that's how long that's been going on. But there is something else going on there. And it's like, and then you have to recognize it because even again, Israelis are not a huge on Netanyahu and Likud.
Jewish voters in America that like Israel are anti-Bibi, and
they are Bibi. Yeah,
that's just the reality of it. And now they're announcing. I mean, Trump was going to have Witkoff consider putting U.S. troops on the ground in Gaza, where it was going to be a temporary control of U.S. Like, that would be insane.
Disaster.
Insane. He keeps getting close to these completely cliff-ending kind of events politically, and that are terrifying, I think, for those that support him and want him to see success.
Yeah, let's get to John. First of all, that's so true. Let's get to. I think I know who you are, John, but I'll just put it up here. Rich and Robert, are you optimistic for a change in direction in the Trump administration, and how long will it take for the correction? What do you think about that, Robert? I'll throw that to you first.
I keep thinking we're going to get it quicker than we do. So I've been surprised. I think it's going to take the success of primary challengers and public opinion surveys and things like that to maybe start to get their attention. I think the only thing that's guaranteed to get their attention is if Thomas Massey wins his primary, if Lindsey Graham loses his primary, if Nate Morris wins in Kentucky, Bill Callahan loses in Louisiana. If we get some election results like that, that will wake them up. J.D. Vance, I still think it's the message. I think Vice President Vance still understands. I think Kennedy understands. I think Gabbard understands. But Kennedy's just trying to get done what he can get done within his agency with all these adversaries he already has. Gabbard has been isolated by Ratcliffe and others. And despite the Russiagate success, I'm not seeing any signs. If Trump's putting out fake numbers about Russian casualties, he's putting out Ukrainian propaganda.
Yeah, he's pumping. Yeah.
Ukrainian casualties as the Russians and the Russian casualties. He looks like a laughing stock to most of the global world when he says that kind of utter nonsense and gibberish. But that means he's not listening to Tulsi Gabbard, which is disturbing. So the people we had inside the administration don't appear to be getting listened to at the moment. And so I don't know how. I think it may take all the way through the primaries of 2026. It may take another year for Trump to get the message. You just hope he doesn't make a disastrous decision that's irreversible between now and then.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I agree, Jonathan. I hate that. I had been like Robert for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And I mean, I'm JD, he's a great liaison. I show everything I show you on the screen. Is available. All right. So like the one thing I always said, well, guys, everybody chill out. Like Donald Trump is different than than any other president. He does listen, even though for some reason his influencers want to run around, his sycophant influencers want to run around and say your opinion doesn't matter to him. That's the stupidest message to say. He doesn't listen to influencers or social media. First of all, yes, he does. But he hasn't been this time, which is concerning. The propaganda stuff like the Ukrainian casualties versus Russian that's Jackie. Right there. That's the Policy for Institute of the Study of War, whatever the hell it's called, or the Institute for the Study of War. They're nutcases and propagandists, and they've been in his ear more than once, and that comes right out of him. And that's concerning. So I do think now, unfortunately, I'm far less optimistic. I don't even think optimistic would be a fair word. I think that you're going to have to put down some of his people. So like you're going to have to save Trump from himself. The Republican voter will have to save Donald Trump from himself. That's the way I feel, because he trusts apparently, from what I understand, he trusts these people who are giving him awful advice, not asking questions like, how come your numbers look different than the ones you published in the Wall Street Journal, the ones you hand to me? Why do they look different? Like, I mean, some of this stuff is so obvious, but it isn't working. I don't know what to say. I wish I had a better news to deliver some of you. I want to just put this up here on the screen because I think this is his hurdle. Neither side is taking. It's not my war. Like, I'm so representative of what we're talking about here.
Yes.
It's so representative.
Steal that one. Well, I mean, to give you an idea of how bad the hostility was, I was getting the people who are evangelical Christians, but they're younger, messages from them saying, maybe we need to remind everybody who killed Jesus. It was
yeah. Oh, I got them too.
I was like, that's the level of anger that is.
I got that too.
My Israeli friends out there, and I've got many. You got to pay attention to this, or you're going to blow it all up. If you just let Bibi go full hard right. I mean, they decided to march on the Alaska Mosque. The national security minister in the hard right, that's the key hard right element to Bibi's current government, and to hint at that they were going to raise the Alaska Mosque and rebuild the temple. It's like, do you want to enrage the entire Muslim world even more? Do you want World War III? That's how insane these people are. And by the way, what Mike Davis doesn't get, guess where they want to send the Palestinians? They want to expel them from Gaza. Nobody else.
Where they going, Mike?
Take them to Europe and the United States of America. They want to send all those Palestinians here. No, thank you. And
I'm sure they'll vote Republican when they get here, Mike. Give me a break. I mean, unbelievable. But yeah, we've gotten that before. Sergeant Willie, you are very emblematic. You're very, you exemplify the kind of feedback that we've been getting. I got the same thing, Robert. I think we need to remind them who put down Jesus. I think we need to, Laura, when we were talking, I was telling you about that conversation. We were reading through another one. They said, I follow the Old Testament. I follow the New Testament, not the Old Testament. I mean, this is the way, and these are young evangelicals, by the way, from states like Iowa, and it's not good, guys. It's not good.
Not liking war. Iowa, Wisconsin.
They do, though. Like, this should not be surprising to anybody. These are
the historical opposition areas to war, and they happen to overlap with the swing areas for congressional districts and Senate seats. Just FYI.
Yeah. And I think that's why probably he did drive out a huge vote in New Hampshire that nobody really expected him to get. He did lose the state, but certainly 3 points. 3 points. That's super close. And that's because of that. Closed the gap in Minnesota. One was able to, in large part because of a lot of these people in Wisconsin, a very, very narrow margin. Had it not been for those voters, that had been a cooked, guys. Yeah. And again, I mean, we've been through this on Inside the Numbers by county, Robert. I mean, by county. Mike Rogers, such a great example. As like, this like blind Israel following neocon and why he fell shy and why Donald Trump did not. And I'm telling you, and by the way, Mike Rogers only did as well as he did because Donald Trump is on the ballot. Mike Rogers will lose in 26.
Yeah, Mike Rogers is going to get killed in 2020.
He's going to get crushed.
It's not going to be close.
That's right. Trump's 2 terms are remembered as him trying to join a club that will never accept him. Yeah. I think that, I think that's it.
He's never going to celebrate him. The neocons are never going to really embrace him. He's recognized he's Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack and celebrate the role, not try to pretend he's something he's not.
I think you responded to Rich before, but I'm going to put it up here because I don't know if Rich understands. You're talking about if these tariffs go into place,
Correct.
If you think oil is going to fall, Rich, I don't know what you're talking about because nobody's expecting that. Nobody.
The oil could have gone that direction. Continued his prior policy.
Maybe that's what he meant.
I think, or maybe he thought I was saying it's going to happen right now. It's saying if Trump does it on Friday, some of the futures markets are projecting oil going way up. So for those that don't remember, when Trump came in, I think oil was around $72 a barrel.
Yeah,
got it all the way down to under 60 by May, and then he started flirting around with the war in Iran. Then other stuff, and all of a sudden it's now all the way back up to $66 in there a barrel. And the projection by various markets, you go to Zero Hedge and other markets. I recommend Doomberg. Doomberg does, the little chicken guy, but all he does is follow. He's big libertarian politically, but all he does is follow the energy markets and the commodity markets. And his prediction was that oil would go over 80 in a barrel if Trump actually institutes these sanctions on Friday, these massive secondary sanctions for buying Russian oil because of how it will impact the oil markets. Not only that, the Brits are trying to figure out a way to sabotage the so-called shadow fleet. This is just the fleet that ships Russian oil to try to either further inflame energy prices. So that's how you could see if the Straits of Hormuz had been closed, like Iran was on pace to do, like we predicted, like Trump figured out belatedly, was we were right. His State Department was wrong. Yeah. That the estimates was that according to Doomberg and others, that it would more than double. So am I an oil expert? Not at all. I'm looking at these other people who generally have been very predictive in the oil markets. And the idea that you could just issue massive sanctions on oil and it have no impact on price. What world are you living in, my friend?
Yeah. And we have seen this in the past, by the way, not with tariffs, but with sanctions, traditional sanctions, even with special exemptions given, which is key because I'm going to look to see how Trump handles this when you slap sanctions on a country like he did with Iran, for instance, in his first term. The reason why they're often ineffective is because they give out these exemptions to our allies and stuff, and it really does not reduce, their revenue by much, which doesn't cause like a lot of disruption in oil prices because supply is still going out, right? So Trump, though, put the handle on that.
Yeah, right now Trump has an exemption that says Iran can sell oil without sanctions to China, for example. That's 95% of their purchases.
So. I was just going to say that's literally the Asian market is the big deal. So, not that we don't get anything in Qatar. I think it's some astronomical number. I think it's like 90% of natural gas or something through that, So, but when it comes to Iran and Russia and stuff, without those exemptions being cut, Robert, I mean, that will definitely have some kind of a different impact. But that's why he hurt Iran as bad as he did, because he took those exemptions away, which Biden then reinstated. And oh, by the way, that was the revenue they used to fund the attack by Hamas on Israel. Everyone knows that. So literally the United States paid for that. And now we're dealing with
them, by the way. And the way he got the ceasefire with Iran is he agreed that they could be exempt from the sanctions for their sale of oil to China.
Which cripples them. So again, for Israel, we literally just gave up the best tool that we had to not only cripple Iran, but it actually hurt China and others too. And it forced the EU to get to stop buying so much from enemies like Iran because they were not exempt either. Germany, right? And Germany buys a shit ton of oil from the Russians. So if this, I don't know, man. We'll see what Putin how
through these other subterfuge ways. But if he
bottom
basically
line is, Robert, what's the end game of doing this, bro? He's not going to agree to give the Donbass back. He's not going to give the Donbass back.
No. He's not going to jeopardize Russia's future by what they consider an existential war by forfeiting. I get these people saying, well, Putin will negotiate. He said what his terms are, that the realities on the ground have to be recognized, that the Donbass, which is historically Russision, which is recognized as Russian, which the people there are Russian, the people have already voted in those provinces.
Overwhelmingly.
To join Russia, that those areas are recognized as Russian, and that Ukraine agrees not to join NATO and have a huge army on their front lines.
Which you would demand as well. Listen up. Every
Trump
American
would demand twice as much if he was president of Russia.
There's no way that we would allow Russia, for instance, to take over Alberta, make it a satellite state, and then keep an
army there. A pact that's committed to waging war on us. Okay?
Absolutely zero chance. And for people who don't know this, even Putin himself was very okay with NATO being in Europe, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, but all of these years. It wasn't until the Bush administration and then later in 2008, massive NATO expansion, when he began to to oppose that, because he knew what we were going to do. He knew what we were planning here, Robert.
NATO, so to have a secure peace in Europe.
Yeah.
We refused it. So it's our own, and Trump knows this, and he keeps pretending. He's just mad that Kellogg was lying to him all along. The First Policy Institute Ukraine plan was a joke. It was a military industrial complex plan. They were the ones who fund the America First Policy Institute. They're not America First at all.
At all.
And their goal was to keep the war going because they knew Russia would not accept these terms. That was their goal, is to keep suckering Trump into thinking their economy is terrible and Russia's getting crushed in the conflict. Yet somehow they keep advancing while Ukraine's going backwards. But
Trump did accept his terms before. Trump was okay. This is something you guys should know. Donald Trump was okay with not making Ukraine a NATO country. The Eastern gains are his. They're lost, guys. They're not going back. Putin has no interest in going any more west. He would have a nightmare on his hand if he tried to occupy Western Ukraine. He has no interest in doing that. It's the same way that they have a nightmare on their hands trying to occupy Eastern Ukraine, which is ethnic Russian, which is why, by the way, they just took American money to shell innocent people for years. And Zelensky was elected to end that, which he didn't. He slowed it up. But there were thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent people murdered every day in that region, guys. I'm sorry. You're not always right because you're America, and that's it. That's bullshit. Okay. It's not, you would not accept it, and we can't ask Vladimir Putin to accept it. That's crazy. And into his position, he's like, dude, Donald Trump got spun up and rolled up and thrown out the first time. All I got to do is chill for a few years and I'll be just fine. All right. This is a great question. Would JD handle this better, or would it be more of the same? Trump kicked the door down. Would JD be better at clearing?
I see Trump as a transitional figure rather than a transformative one. He could have been transformative.
I do now.
Yeah. I had hoped he would become transformative, but I think JD can be transformative.
Yeah.
The big difference is generationally. JD understands a lot of these issues much better than Trump, particularly young MAGA and the new independent swing voters, because he comes from Democratic political ancestry in Appalachia. Second, he's more intellectual than Trump. Trump is more instinctual. JD is more intellectual. And in dealing with actual power, once you're in power, instincts work fine on the campaign trail. But in office, you need intellectual development, not instinctual development. And JD has an abundance in intellectual development. So JD probably wouldn't be as strong as a candidate as Trump is in his political marketing skills, but he will be much better as a president, in my opinion, than Trump will. Than Trump is.
Yeah, I really have nothing much to add to that other than just to expand on the generational thing, which is what I would have said. And I think you nailed. I could just tell you when you like talk to the guy, when you level with him and you're like, look, JD, we're both the same age. We both had the same kind of story here. You know, they're full of shit. He knows they're full of shit. Like, that's the difference. All right. And our experiences inform our beliefs, folks. And Donald Trump and JD Vance had very different experiences of life. JD knows firsthand what it means to be suckered by the war drums and lured into a lie. While meanwhile, at home, your family's suffering bad and nobody cares and nobody's there to help them. He knows better. And then, by the way, that you have to work your ass off in a pit of vipers, a den of thieves, everywhere you go just to get on top. And he knows those people will never accept him. That's the difference, too, with JD Vance. He's not stupid. He knows he's always going to be that dumb white kid from Appalachia, brother, to them. Them. Meanwhile, he's smart as shit. But and I just think he's more aware of his, like, where he stands in all of this. You know what I mean?
Constituency and community stands. He also pays attention to podcasters. He doesn't pay much attention to Fox News. Doesn't pay much attention to Wall Street Journal. He has the right sources as well. Further informing social media and podcasters, YouTube and Rumble. These are the places that, and Spotify and whatnot. Those are the places that he's listening to. So he's attuned to what Theo Vaughn is saying. He's attuned to what Tim Dillon is saying. He's attuned to what Andrew Stein is saying. He's attuned to what Joe Rogan is saying. He's attuned to what we are saying. He's much more attuned to his actual audience and voter base than Trump is nowhere near it. You can tell Trump is watching, CNBC and reading New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Fox all day. That's all he does. And it's constantly a problem, but it's getting worse in this term than it was even in his first term.
There's just some of these aren't even questions. I'm just going to blast them out real quick. When you get into bed with these losers like Lady Lindsay, corruption inevitably follows. There's some Zoomers like me, and I'm seeing more of that now than you decided to be an establishment hoe. You shall be treated as such. Think Metallica, for whom the bell tolls. That's good. And then also, Mr. Grilled Cheese said memes have to be raw to be one, funny, and two, effective in politics. Right now, the memes are going to hurt Trump because he's found himself on the wrong side of some of these issues, but maybe he needs to see them. Otherwise, you'll have corporate memes like how the DNC tweets out. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Those are all good. And Rumble, I gotta bust Dave's balls on how to do, like, Rumble Studio. I don't know if I could do it for Inside the Numbers, but like, I love how you can bring in those locals and you can bring in YouTube and you can bring in Rumble, obviously. So I got to look into that because this way I'd be able to share it with everybody on the screen as well. I don't think as of now, I can't really do that. If I missed you on a Rumble rant or something, I'm sorry about that. We'll get you next time. Don't forget, it's August 4th, the Public Polling Project. Tweet, share, contribute if you can. Do what you can, obviously, but we're way behind for 2 polls. So there's like these bursts, Robert, and I'm like, shit, let's poll because you got to. And then you're like, shit, the burst stopped. So, do what you can, guys. The bigger the contributor base, the less burden it is on everyone else, right? So sharing is also extremely important. All right. And then, Robert, what do you got going on, brother? What do you got going on for the week?
Yeah. So, definitely continue to support Public Polling Project because it's the way you can get accurate information for yourself and accurate information to the decision makers so that your voice is heard in Washington, D.C. So that's why it's so important. For all the political bets and predictions, including on the economy, what the Fed's going to do, maybe where oil prices are going to go. So far, by the way, I've made money betting on where the oil price is going to go. And so have subscribers at sportspicks.locals.com. That's where I put up all the political betting information, along with sports and events and whatnot. But that's where we put all that, sportspicks.locals.com. That's where you can get all that. Continue to support the Public Polling Project so we can get accurate information to the White House. So you don't have President Trump saying dumb, stupid things like, casualty rates, that he thinks the American people want him to hide the Epstein files, things like this. You can help correct him with accurate information that comes from the most accurate pollster, as even confirmed by Grok itself.
Amazing. And there it is up on the screen, guys. Sportspicks.locals.com. That's whoop. Yep, I'm right. It's right there. We ended on time. Holy Mary, Mother of God. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Robert, thanks all the best, my friend. I'll see you in a week. All right, guys, be good. That's Robert Barnes. All right, I'm going to take us out. The links for everything are in the description below. Also, as is our supporter who we love, 1775 Coffee. Go check them out. All right, don't forget, Inside the Numbers, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. Nothing but love for you. Go check us out on Locals. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, guys.